Hey friends, it is Jenna, what is up, and welcome back to the Board Game Garden, and welcome to a fun preview of a game, which I will mention right now that this is a little bit different than previews that I've done in the past because this is actually a game that has already come to crowdfunding. It is available on late pledging, so I will have a link to the campaign down in the description box if you guys are interested in late pledging this, but this is Puerto Rico 1897 Special Edition. So two publishers, both Alea and Awaken Realms, have come together and they are coming out with another special edition of a very loved game, which in the past they did do the Castles of Burgundy special edition, which the Castles of Burgundy is a very special game to me. It is my favorite game of all time currently, and so I did some content on that as well. And so when Awaken Realms reached out to me and asked if I wanted to do some content on the next special edition game that they were going to do, I was very interested because, fun fact, I've never actually played Puerto Rico before. It's been a game that I have heard of, that I have, known of. I know that it's in the top 50 games of all time. I did a little bit of research, and the first ever kind of version of Puerto Rico was published in 2002, and it is designed by Andreas Seyfarth. And there has been actually quite a few different versions of this game that has come out over the years. There was a version that came out in 2007, there was one that came out in 2011, 2020, and then 2022 was the most recent one. And now we do have the special edition, which is going to be fulfilled in the near future. So they're actually in the process of doing development. And what they really wanted from this kind of content is to show the viewers what they kind of have in mind for the final product and get your feedback. So in this video, I'm going to kind of be going through my thoughts on Puerto Rico because I have really enjoyed it thus far because this is my first kind of jump into Puerto Rico. So I'm going to share my thoughts on that. And then I really do just want to show you guys all of the components and the things that they're working on so that you guys can go in the comments and let Awaken Realms and Alea know what kind of things or what your opinions are on the production so far. So yes, that is going to be the video today. So if you guys are interested in all of that, if you want to hear more about Puerto Rico, if you want to see all of the components and what they have going on so far with the development, just keep on watching. Give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoy. Also, hit that subscribe button down below if you've yet to do so. We'd love to have you here in the garden. And like I said, please do comment down below with any thoughts that you have, any things that you wish would be changed, any things that you really like, please put them down in the comment section so that the team at Awaken Realms and Alea know and can see and can better develop this game to when it comes to the final product, that it is the best that it can possibly be for you. So without further ado, let's get into this preview of Puerto Rico 1897 Special Edition, shall we? All right, so like I said, this was my first introduction into the game of Puerto Rico. It's always been a game that I've known of. It's never really been a game that I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to try that. It is quite an older kind of Euro style game, and I wasn't expecting much of it, but the first time that I actually played this, it was such a surprise to me how much I enjoyed the game. There is a lot of really awesome player interaction, and the strategy in this game is really cool because there is some deep strategy with timing and how you're playing out your turns. So I'm going to quickly go over how the game is generally played. Obviously, if you've seen Puerto Rico before, a lot of you probably already know how it plays. A lot of you probably are huge fans of it, but if you're not, I do want to kind of explain the game to you because like me, I know that there's a lot of people out there that actually don't know anything about Puerto Rico. So yes, basically the game is going to be played until one of three things happens. So one is if all of the workers are gone, which in a specific player count, there's going to be a specific amount of workers that are put aside, and whenever someone takes a certain action, the workers from this area are going to be taken away or drafted, and then more workers are going to be put out. If at any point, if more workers need to be placed in here and they are run out, that triggers the end of the game. So that's one way. Another way is that if the victory point tokens here, the physical victory point tokens run out, which again, based off of player count, there's going to be a certain amount of victory points here. We have some 5 victory points and we have some 1 victory points. Once those run out, that will also trigger the end of the game. Once they do run out, if that's the thing that triggers the end of the game, you still can continue to gain victory points, but they just tell you to keep track of your other victory points on a piece of paper or on your phone or something, because there are certain things that are only going to be counting your physical victory points and not the victory points that you got after the end game was triggered. And then the last thing that is going to trigger the end of the game is going to be the building tiles. So on each player's board, you're going to have spots for buildings. You're also going to have spots for your estates. I believe that's what they are called. So you have 12 spots for estates. This does not trigger the end of the game. It's only building spots. If anyone at any point fills up their entire area of buildings, that will also trigger the end of the game, which all the times that I've played the game, that has not happened, someone filling up. It has almost happened in one of the games, but I believe the workers ran out before that person was able to fill their buildings. So those are the 3 ways that the game is going to end: workers, victory points, or building tiles. And then basically what you're going to be doing on your turn is you are simply going to be taking one of the roles that are available here. So you guys can see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different roles. There are going to be some roles taken away with smaller player counts and more roles being added with larger player counts. I do believe that in every player count, you are going to have the planter, recruiter, builder, craftsman, trader, and captain. And then in larger player counts, I believe with 4 and 5, which it goes up to 5 players, it is a 1 to 5 player game. In this version of Puerto Rico, they have introduced a solo mode, which is really, really exciting. I would love to show off the solo mode in the future if I can. So keep an eye out for that if I end up being able to do that. The solo mode is still in development, but if I am able to, I will definitely show off the solo mode. But in the 2-player game, you're only going to have the 6 here available. But once you get up to 4 players, you're going to have an adventurer be added. And then once you get to the 5-player, you have another adventurer being added. And then additionally, there is a smuggler expansion that is included in this one, where you have a smuggler role that can be added as well. That can mix up the game in really cool ways. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to play with the smuggler yet, but I would love to because it sounds like absolute chaos and so much fun. So yes, those are all of the different roles. And like I said, on your turn, you're just choosing one of those roles, and then you are going to be able to perform that role first. And because you picked that role, you'll be able to have some sort of advantage. So for example, if I picked the planter, I would be able to take my turn first. So I would be able to take one of the estates. And because I do have the advantage, I get to, if I would like, choose a quarry instead of one of the available estate tiles. So that would be my advantage. I don't have to take a quarry, but I could, and I will explain quarries after. And then once I have taken my turn, either taken a quarry or an estate tile, every other player then gets to take that action as well. So you are picking the role for not only yourself, but everybody else gets to do that as well. So it's this, again, very cool timing and really paying attention to the other players at the table and what they want to do, and maybe holding off on doing something because obviously I don't have to take that action if I know someone else is going to take it, and then I will be able to do it as well anyways. That is the general flow of the game. One player on their turn will pick a role. They will place it beside their board. They will do that action with the advantage, and then every other player will then take that action as well. It would go on to the next player. That player will take a role. Next player would take a role. The next player would take a role. Once everyone has taken a role and everyone has taken the action of that role, you will then have some of the roles still available here. Every role that's not taken will get a coin on them. That then will make that role more appealing to take on the next round or the following round, and the coins will stack up on that rolls. So at some point, someone's really gonna want coins and they're gonna take that role just because they want the coins and not so much about the role. But yes, let's get into actually what all of the different roles are, because in this game, you are ultimately trying to gain resources. There are 5 different types of resources, and they are a little bit in a hierarchy of worth. So we have first the corn, we have second fruit, third is sugar, fourth is tobacco, and fifth is coffee. So you have all 5 of those resources, and I will show off all of the components as I'm talking about them. These components in this game are absolutely stunning. I am obsessed with the resources in this game. Each of the resources are finite, so if they do run out, you cannot gain any more of them. So that's a really cool part of the game. And then additionally, they have some really cool, like fancy upgraded things for the game that very much so like the Castles of Burgundy with the kind of 3D tiles and stuff. They're not really necessary in the game, but if this is a game that you really love and you are passionate about, these are kind of Deluxified components that would make this such a cool experience. So additionally, you also have these kind of 3D estate tiles that instead of actually taking one of these flat tiles, you would take one of these 3D tiles and place it on your board. And then eventually you would have a full board of all of these different 3D components with all of your crops, which I think would be so, so cool. So yes, all of the components, as I'm talking about them, you'll be able to see. And like I said, leave any comments down below of any of your concerns about any of the components or anything you really like, or things that you think will, you know, allow them to improve on the components in any way. So like I was saying, your main goal in this game is to produce goods. And in order to produce goods, you are going to have these estate tiles on your board, and then also you're going to have some production buildings in certain situations. And then also with the estates and the buildings, you are additionally going to have workers that are going to be working at those buildings in order to produce those goods. So you're kind of throughout the game building up this engine of the estates, the buildings, the workers, in order to eventually be able to produce these goods. And then with these goods, you are doing 2 different things. One, you are selling them to the trade house that is going to get you coins. Coins are not going to be worth anything at the end of the game, but they are going to be very valuable when it comes to purchasing buildings. So you are going to have, like I said, the production buildings that you're going to need in order to produce those goods. You are going to have some other buildings here that are going to give you some special abilities throughout the game. And then you do have 5 of these bigger buildings that take up 2 spots on your board that are going to give you endgame scoring. So those are the ones that you're kind of building up to eventually have at the end of the game in order to get you more victory points in order to win, because ultimately at the end of the game, it's whoever has the most victory points. Like I said, leftover goods don't mean anything. Leftover coins don't mean anything. And then also buildings that don't have workers on them do not get you points either. So all of your buildings at the end of the game, if they have workers on them, they are going to get you victory points depending on where they are here. And then additionally, the endgame victory point buildings, if they don't have a worker, they don't score. So it's very important to have workers on those buildings by the end of the game. So yes, that is one thing that you're going to be doing with your goods, is trading them into the trade house in order to get coins. And then another thing that you're going to do in a huge part of the game is shipping out those goods and getting victory points for them. So the interesting thing about this game is that yes, there is a hierarchy with the goods when it comes to coins, but ultimately when you're shipping out goods, all goods are going to get you 1 victory point no matter what hierarchy they are in. So no matter how good the goods are, you are still going to get the same amount of victory points for those goods as you were for any of the lower hierarchy goods. So super interesting part of the game as well. But anyways, yes, those are the 2 things that you're going to be doing with your goods, getting coins or getting victory points. But yes, let's get into all of the different roles and what they are going to allow you to do on your turn. Also, apologies if my voice sounds crazy by the end of this video because I am sick and we're trying to get through this. But yes, the first role that I wanted to chat about is the planter. So I've kind of already went over this one, but this is how you're going to get more estate tiles onto your board. So this is the main way that you're going to produce goods. Again, you have to have an estate tile and a building, a production building, in order to actually produce. But this is the first step that you will take in order to build that engine of those goods. So this will, if you are the person that takes it as your role, you will get the advantage of being able to, instead of taking one of the available tiles on the board, you can take a query, which a query will give you a discount on buildings, which I will get into how they give you discounts in buildings when I go over the building role or the builder role. But yes, you're either going to get a corn estate, fruit estate, sugar, tobacco, or coffee. Or if you do have the advantage, you can get a query. Additionally, there is a building that allows you to take a query, even if you're not the player that takes this role. But yes, that is the planter role. So everyone would just go around, starting with the first player that took the role, taking their tile, placing it onto their board. You can place it anywhere in this kind of top part that you would like. But that would be the planter. Now, when it comes to production, like I said, the next thing that you're going to need in order to get to that point of production, you do need buildings. So I want to explain the builder tile next, which this is how you are going to build a building. If you are the player that takes this as their role, your advantage is that you get a 1 coin discount on a building that you choose to build. So I would take this, I would then decide what building I would like to build. You have, let's say there's a small fruit depot, large fruit depot, a small sugar mill, a large sugar mill. You have the coffee roaster, you have the tobacco storage, and then additionally you have all of these buildings here that get you additional things. For example, one of my favorite buildings is the hacienda, which this is basically that you gain an estate from the bag before you take your usual one when someone takes the planter action. So on a turn when we are taking the planter action, I would get 1 estate tile from the bag randomly, and then additionally I would get 1 from the board as well. So that's a great way to kind of expedite the process of building up your engine there. So those are some different buildings there. There's a ton of different ones that allow you to kind of mess with the rules a little bit and get by at some rules. So that is the builder action. And then like I mentioned with the buildings, you do get a discount when you have queries. So basically the more queries that you have, the more of a discount that you're going to get on the lower rows. So basically you have row 1, row 2, row 3, and row 4. And so if you have 1 query, and additionally you do have to have a worker on these in order for that ability to be active. So in order for me to actually get a discount with this query, I would actually have to have a worker on it. If I had 1 query, I would then have a 1 coin discount on the first row. If I had 2 queries, I would get a 2 coin discount on the second row. If I had 3 queries, I would have a 3 coin discount on the third row. And then if I have 4 queries, I would have a 4 coin discount on the fourth row. And then obviously if you had, let's say 3 queries, you could still get a 2 coin discount on the second row or a 1 coin discount on the first row. But you have to have the same amount of queries as the row that you would like a discount for, if that makes sense. So that is how the queries work, and that is the builder action. So then the third thing that you're going to need in order to produce these goods is going to be the workers. So that is going to be the recruit action, and the recruit action is going to allow everyone to gain workers from this area here. So there's always going to be a certain amount of workers here available. It's always going to be at least minimum the amount of players that you have. So in a 4-player game, you would have 4 workers set out there. But on future rounds, you are going to count up the amount of empty spaces on everyone's buildings. And if there are more empty spaces on everyone's buildings than there are players, you would place that many. So for example, if in a 4-player game there are 6 empty spots in everyone's buildings, you would place 6 workers there instead of the minimum of 4. But if there were 4 or less empty spaces on people's buildings, you would just put a minimum of 4. So yes, if someone takes the recruiter action, whoever takes it is going to get the advantage of them getting a extra worker. So they would just simply take an extra worker from the supply. They wouldn't take it from this area here. And then starting with the player that has that advantage, they would draft 1 worker from that area. The next player would draft, the next player would draft, the next player would draft. If it comes around to the first player again and there are still workers, that player would then take another one, and then it would just continue like that until there are no more workers in this area here. And then immediately after that action is finished, you would count up how many workers needs to be added there, and then they would be added. So that is how the recruit action works. And now we are moving into actually producing the goods. Those 3 actions are the main 3 actions that you're going to need in order to build up your engine, but the rest of the actions are more so actually producing the goods and either trading them or shipping them out on the ships. So the first one that I'll quickly mention is the adventurer. So this one is going to be added in a 4 or 5 player game, and this is simply that you gain a coin. And the kicker with this one is that nobody else gets that action. So this is the only one that if you take it, no one else gets to do anything. So this is just if you're really in a pinch, if you need a coin, you can take this action and you would get a coin. So moving into one of the most important actions, which is the craftsman, this is going to be how you are producing your goods. So if you are the player that takes this action, you get the advantage of getting 1 additional good of any type that you produce. But basically with this action, everyone is going to look at their board, and I didn't really mention this in the recruit action, but I thought it was pretty self-explanatory. With the workers that you gain, you will then put those onto your estate tiles as well as your buildings. And so when it comes to the craftsman action, you will have the correct workers on the correct estates and buildings in order to produce goods, because basically with all goods aside from corn, you are going to have workers on the respective production building and also workers on the estate tiles of that specific good. So for example, if I wanted to produce coffee, I would have to have a coffee roaster building on my board. Coffee roasters are a little bit changed from the prototype that I have. So I was told to X out one of the worker spots. There are only 2 worker spots available on a coffee roaster, as opposed to the tobacco storage has 3 spots available, as well as the large fruit depot and the large sugar mill. They all have 3 available. The coffee roaster only has 2. So for example, let's say I had my coffee roaster. I had 2 workers on my coffee roaster. In order for me to actually produce 2 coffee, I would have to have 2 coffee estates with a worker on each of them. So I have to have the same amount of workers on my coffee production buildings as I do estates with workers. So in order for me to produce on 2 coffee estate tiles with workers, I have to have 2 workers on coffee production buildings. Hopefully that makes sense. You always have to have the same amount on both of those in order to produce. So if I did have 2 coffee estate tiles with 2 workers, and I had this coffee roaster with 2 workers, I would then produce 2 coffee, and those would go into my kind of resource pool on my board. This action would continue, like I said, with each person going through their production, getting all of the goods, which, like I said, the resources are finite. So if a resource does run out on a player's turn, and the next player in turn order also needs that resource and there's none left, they simply just cannot produce that resource, which is just crazy. But yes, eventually once they do get shipped out, they will get put back into the supply and then they will be available again. So yes, that is the craftsman action and producing your goods. And then lastly, we do have the 2 main actions, which is selling your goods for money and then shipping out your goods for victory points. So the first one is going to be the trader, which is how you're going to sell your goods for money. So that is going to be connected to the trade house here. So you can see that this trade house only has 4 spots for 4 goods. Once those 4 spots are filled, it will get emptied and it can get filled again. But as the person that takes this role, your advantage is that you do gain 1 bonus coin. But what is going to happen here is if you are the one that takes the role, you will be first to choose what good you would like to sell. So for example, if I had, let's say, 1 fruit in my supply, I would be able to say, hey, I'm going to sell 1 fruit. I would look at this chart here. Corn actually gets you 0 coins, but if you time it correctly and you are the player to take the trader role, your advantage is that you do get an extra coin. So you could sell a corn for 1 coin. And then the next would be fruit for 1 coin, sugar for 2 coins, tobacco for 3 coins, and coffee for 4 coins. And then additionally, like I said, with the person that takes this, their advantage is they get an extra coin. So if I took this, I had the advantage. I sold, let's say, a coffee to the trade house, I would get 5 coins in total, 4 and then 1 additional coin. But the kicker with the trade house is that you can never trade a good to the trade house that has already been traded. So if someone else wanted to trade a fruit to the trade house, they could not do that until the trade house was full and then it got emptied because I've already traded a fruit there. So it has to be 4 different goods unless there's a specific building that allows you to sell the same good in the trade house. I don't know exactly what tile that is, but there is one that gets you that special ability. But yes, that is the trade house, and that is how you use the trader action and how you get coins. And then lastly, we have the captain, which the captain is going to be a very, very important role to take when it comes to this game. And this is how you're going to get your victory points, and ultimately that is how you're going to win the game. So if you do take the captain tile, your advantage is that you do get 1 bonus victory point, which is great. But this would then start the shipping process, which there are 3 boats here. In each different player count, there's going to be boats of different capacities. And the really cool thing, and one of my favorite parts of this production, is the fact that these little things come out and you can change the capacity of the ships based off of player count. So on this little thing, it has a 6, and you just slip it into the back. It sits in there and makes it so the ship has a 6 capacity. This one here is a 7. So I've slipped in the 7 here, and now it has a 7 capacity. And there are a bunch of different ones here that you can change up the capacity of the boats based off of player count. So in this, I believe I have it set up for a 4-player game. So we have a 5, a 6, and a 7 capacity boat. And what is going to happen here is whoever took the captain tile and is that captain role, they get to go first, and they're going to place all of their goods of one type into one boat. And the important thing with this is that once a boat has one type of good in it, that is the only good that can be added to that boat until it is full. So for example, let's say I had 3 coffee. I could add 3 coffee into the 7 capacity boat, and there's still going to be 4 available spots, but if no one else has coffee, no one else can place any goods into that ship until someone has coffee. But in that example, if I placed 3 coffee into that ship, I would then get 3 victory points for that, because you're simply just going to get 1 victory point for every good that you drop off into a boat. And that is the same for every single one of the goods, which, like I said, there is a hierarchy, but when it comes to shipping out, there's no hierarchy. Every good just gets you 1 victory point. So yes, every ship is then going to have 1 good be applied to it. So 1 ship could be coffee. The next player would then go, they would add all of their resources of 1 type into a ship. If all ships already had 3 different resources in them and they didn't have any of those, but they had some other resources, they simply just wouldn't be able to add anything to the ships. It would go on to the next player. They would add any resources in that they could of 1 type. It would then move from player to player until everyone has added all of their resources that can be added into the ships. This is another thing about the shipping process, is that you must ship everything that you can. You can't hold back anything. And the last thing that's crazy about the shipping is that if you have any leftover goods at the end of the shipping phase, they must be discarded, which is crazy, aside from 1 good. So I could decide to keep 1 crate of corn. Additionally, there are a few buildings that allow you to hold any number of 1 type of good, which is really helpful when it comes to this, because if you can choose the captain role at a really bad time for everyone else aside from yourself, you could really screw over the other players and have them lose a ton of resources, because if you've noticed that you have the resource types of the ships that are currently being shipped, you can actually add them, but then if other players have different resources that can't be placed into the ships, they have to discard them. So it's this really cool timing and really paying attention to what everyone has and what everyone can ship. very cool part of the game, which I love. So yes, that is everything for the shipping. If a ship does become full, obviously no more resources of that type can be added, and it doesn't get wiped until the end of the ship phase. So if other players had more of that resource, unfortunately they can't put it into the ship because it doesn't get emptied until the end of that round. So yes, that is everything for the captain and the shipping phase. And I do believe that that is pretty much everything for an overview of Puerto Rico. Like I said, throughout me explaining this, I will show you guys a ton of B-roll and really show off the different aspects and components of this version of Puerto Rico. I think they did a fantastic job. There are a few different versions of this available on crowdfunding. So you do have a standard edition. So instead of these really nice deluxeified components, you do have some more simplified kind of tokens that you would add to the ships and different things like that. You have punch outs instead of these wooden victory point tokens. You also have punch outs for the coins instead of these metal coins. Additionally, I think the 3D buildings as well as the 3D estate tiles, those are additional things that you can get on top of the fancy deluxe version, kind of similar to, like I said before, with the Castles of Burgundy and the 3D terrain. That wasn't necessarily in the base kind of deluxeified version of it, but it was an additional thing that you could purchase as well. But yes, I do believe that that is everything for the video. I do want to quickly show off a few other things. This is the first player token, which I think is absolutely beautiful, and probably one of the miniatures that has really made me want to do miniature painting the most. I just think this is beautiful. It's like a little table set with a coffee and a quill and coins and a map and stuff. It's really cool. Additionally, they also have a reference card here with all of the buildings, what they do. We obviously have the production buildings. You have the small commercial buildings, which are the ones that give you the abilities. You have the production buildings, like I said, and then the large commercial buildings, which are the end game victory point buildings. That's on the one side, and then I'm assuming on the other side here, they'll have maybe an overview of the different roles and what they do for you, maybe endgame stuff. I don't know what they'll put on the other side, but I'm sure they're going to put something else on the other side. You could even, in the comment section, let them know what you think should be put on the other side. All of the boards are double layered, and I do believe that they have, with stretch goals, different art for each of the boards. So both of these boards are actually different. There are different characters that you can add into the boards. So you can pick a character that you like the most. And then there is additionally some expansions that are being added to the game. Like I said, they are working on the solo mode. I believe they're working on a new 2-player mode. And then there's also, I'm losing my voice, the festival expansion, which I haven't played with this yet, but it looks very cool. There's like an additional festival board, and it looks like your goal is going to be set out here, and then once you have that, you would get some sort of reward for that. There's also, which I think this is a really, really fun addition to the game, which is achievements. I believe you just shuffle these up, give each player 1 or 2, choose one, and then that is just a personal objective that you get to go for throughout the game. So have at least 7 goods of fruit and sugar combined, at least one of each. You get 4 victory points. Dispatch a transport ship with corn. Build a big building with at least 4 coin discount. So you'd have to have 4 queries to do that. Deliver at least 5 goods at once. Recruit at least 4 workers during one recruiter phase. All the way to one here, which is occupy at least 11 spaces with countryside tiles and occupy at least 11 spaces with buildings, and you get 11 victory points for that. And that is the Governor of the Year achievement card. So there's a bunch of different achievement cards that you could work with. I believe that is everything for today's video. My voice is quickly leaving, but it is okay. I am so happy that I was able to cover this game because honestly, like I said, Puerto Rico was never a game that I was like, I need to try this. And now that I have tried it, I fully understand why it is in the top 100 games of all time. I understand why they are making a special edition of this game, because it is really such a fantastic game. It is such a unique game, and definitely not a game that I thought I would enjoy, but the player interaction in this game, the amount of kind of like focus you have to have on what the other players are doing, it just makes it like such a great experience, and you're always focused in the game. You're never sitting there waiting for it to be your turn, because on every player's turn, you are getting to do some sort of action. So you are just as invested in the other player's turns as you are your own turn, which I think is really something that is not often used in games. I feel like that's a great thing to have in a game. And then additionally, I think the rules are just so simple. It is a really easy to teach game, but then there's just so much strategic depth within that. And I've said this time and time again on my channel, there's just something about that type of game that has simple rules, but has this like infinite replayability and just awesome decisions and really strategic decisions that just make it such a great game. So yes, I understand the hype of Puerto Rico now, and I'm super, super excited for this one to come to full fruition and fulfill. Really, really excited for that. Please let me know down in the comments if you have backed Puerto Rico, if it's something that you are interested in maybe late backing possibly. But yes, I think that is everything for today's video. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Again, apologies for my voice. Really trying to get back into it. My body is slowly getting better. But yes, thank you all so much for hanging out. I appreciate it. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed. Also, hit that subscribe button down below if you've yet to do so. We'd love to have you here in the garden. Again, a huge thank you to Awaken Realms for sponsoring today's video. I appreciate it so, so much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to cover this on my channel, because I think it was such a surprise to me, and I'm really happy that I ended up doing it. And yes, like I said, please let Awaken Realms know down in the comments anything that you would change about the current look of it, the production, everything that they're doing here. Please let them know down in the comments what you were thinking. If there's things that you like, things that you don't like, things that you feel like could change, even things that you think they could add to make the game even better, please let them know down in the comments. I love you guys so, so much. Remember, you are somebody's reason to smile, and I will see you in the next board game video. Bye, friends.